There are places on Earth where the normal rules of evolution don't apply. Islands. Isolated fragments of land floating in vast oceans where life doesn't just adapt, it transforms. Where mice grow to the size of cats. Where elephants shrink to the height of ponies. Where birds forget how to fly and lizards become dragons. This is Varanus komodoensis, the Komodo dragon. 300 pounds of muscle and venom, the largest lizard alive on Earth. But here's what most people don't know. This creature shouldn't exist at all. Not here, not this size. Its very existence defies what we thought we understood about evolution. Because the Komodo dragon isn't a product of these islands. It's a refugee. The Indonesian islands of Komodo, Rinca, Flores, and Gili Motang are not paradise. They're volcanic, arid, and brutal. Temperatures soar above 95 degrees. Food is scarce. Resources limited. For most animals, these islands would be evolutionary dead ends. Places where species go to shrink, adapt, or die. Yet here lives the world's apex reptilian predator. For decades, scientists believed they had solved the mystery. The story went like this. A small lizard ancestor arrived on these remote islands millions of years ago. With no predators to fear and abundant prey, specifically a species of pygmy elephant called stegodon, natural selection favored larger and larger individuals. Generation by generation, the lizards grew. They became specialists, evolving massive bodies to hunt diminutive elephants through scrubland and volcanic hills. It was a perfect narrative. Island isolation plus ecological opportunity equals evolutionary explosion. The textbooks called it island gigantism, the biological phenomenon where small species become giants when freed from mainland pressures. There was only one problem. It was completely wrong. In 2009, paleontologist Scott Hocknall and his team at the Queensland Museum made a discovery that shattered everything. Deep in the fossil beds of eastern Australia, thousands of miles from Indonesia, they found bones. Ancient bones, lizard bones, massive lizard bones. When they compared these Australian fossils to modern Komodo dragon skeletons, the match was perfect. Identical vertebrae, identical skull structures, identical teeth, those curved, serrated blades designed for ripping flesh. The fossils dated back 4 million years. Varanus komodoensis didn't evolve in Indonesian islands. It evolved in Australia, alongside the giants of that ancient continent. And it evolved its monstrous size not in isolation, but in one of the most competitive predator environments Earth has ever known. Let that sink in. Australia, 4 million years ago, was a crucible of megapredators. Marsupial lions with bone-crushing jaws prowled the forests. Giant crocodiles lurked in rivers, and towering above them all was Megalania prisca, a 16-foot, 1,300-pound monitor lizard, the largest terrestrial lizard that ever lived. The Komodo dragon shared this world. It hunted in the shadows of Megalania, competed with mammalian carnivores, and somehow survived. This wasn't a small lizard growing large in comfortable isolation. This was a giant lizard learning to thrive among monsters. Then, around 900,000 years ago, something happened. Sea levels fluctuated, land bridges appeared and vanished, and Komodo dragons dispersed westward, island hopping across an archipelago that stretched between Australia and Southeast Asia. Fossils discovered on Timor, an island between Australia and Flores, reveal an even larger unnamed monitor species, evidence of this migration corridor. By the time Komodo dragons reached the Indonesian islands, they were already enormous, already apex predators. They didn't become giants on the islands. They arrived as giants. Stand face to face with a Komodo dragon, and you're not looking at evolution's gentle hand. You're looking at violence refined over millions of years. Their heads are massive, armored slabs with sensory pits that detect infrared radiation. They can taste the air with a forked yellow tongue that samples scent particles, tracking prey from miles away, detecting a dying animal up to 6 miles distant. Their eyesight is exceptional at detecting movement across open savanna, though color perception may be their weak point. But it's the teeth that tell the real story. 60 serrated, blade-like teeth, each one curved backward. These are xiphodont teeth, the same design found in Tyrannosaurus rex and other theropod dinosaurs. The serrations have a dentine core covered in thin enamel, and in 2024, scientists discovered something extraordinary. The tips and edges of these teeth are reinforced with iron, actual metallic iron concentrated at the cutting edges, maintaining razor sharpness throughout the dragon's life. Every 40 days, a tooth is replaced. At any moment, a dragon has 5 replacement teeth queued behind each active one. They're living saw blades, constantly renewing their arsenal. Their bite strategy is devastatingly effective. They don't clamp down like crocodiles. Instead, they grip and pull, using powerful neck muscles to yank backward while serrated teeth slice through hide, muscle, and arteries. The wounds are catastrophic, massive, and often lethal within hours. For decades, people believed the bacteria in Komodo saliva caused septic infections that killed prey days later. It became scientific legend, the dirty mouth theory. Komodo dragons were supposedly walking petri dishes of pathogenic bacteria, using microbes as biological weapons. But in 2009, venom researcher Brian Fry from the University of Melbourne put a Komodo dragon skull into an MRI scanner. What he found changed everything. 2 venom glands, hidden in the lower jaw, loaded with toxic compounds. When Fry's team analyzed the venom, they discovered proteins that prevent blood clotting, drop blood pressure, induce hypothermia, cause muscle paralysis, and trigger shock. Some compounds match the potency of inland taipan venom, the world's deadliest snake. The bacterial infection theory? A scientific fairy tale, as Fry called it. Komodo dragons are meticulous groomers, cleaning their mouths after feeding. Studies of captive dragons show their oral bacteria are no more dangerous than any other carnivores. The myth persisted because of observations of water buffalo dying slowly from infected wounds. But those buffalo aren't natural prey. They were introduced by humans and often escape into swamps, where environmental bacteria cause secondary infections. The truth is simpler and more elegant. Komodo dragons kill with a 1-2 combination. Serrated iron-tipped teeth create massive lacerations. Venom accelerates blood loss and induces shock. Death comes not from sepsis, but from hemorrhagic shock, rapid, overwhelming blood loss. They don't wait days for prey to die. Observations of wild hunts show kills completed within less than 30 minutes. This is not a scavenger relying on luck and bacteria. This is a precision predator wielding chemistry and mechanical trauma as weapons. Here's where the story becomes truly strange. If Komodo dragons arrived at Indonesian islands already large, why are they still large? Why didn't the islands force them to shrink? After all, the island rule, confirmed by a 2021 study analyzing thousands of vertebrate species, clearly shows that large animals on islands usually become smaller. Limited resources, smaller territories, reduced prey. All of these pressures favor dwarfism, and Flores provides the perfect case study. The island once hosted Stegodon sondari, a pygmy elephant standing barely 4 feet tall at the shoulder, a dwarf descendant of much larger mainland ancestors. Later came Stegodon florensis insularis, slightly taller but still diminutive. Both species shrank dramatically under island pressures. So why not the Komodo dragon? The answer lies in their remarkable stability. Fossil evidence from Flores shows that Komodo dragon body size remained unchanged for at least 900,000 years, even as the ecosystem around them collapsed and rebuilt multiple times. Two species of Stegodon went extinct. Giant tortoises vanished. Early hominids arrived 880,000 years ago. Homo floresiensis, the hobbit species, appeared and eventually disappeared. Modern humans arrived 10,000 years ago. A massive volcanic eruption around 12,000 years ago wiped out much of the remaining megafauna. Through it all, the Komodo dragon remained the same size. This isn't island gigantism, it's phyletic gigantism. Size inherited from large ancestors and maintained through time. The dragons succeeded not by specializing, but by being generalists. When Stegodon went extinct around 12,000 years ago, leaving no medium-sized prey on Flores for thousands of years, the dragons simply adapted. They hunted smaller animals, they scavenged, they ate eggs, carrion, even each other. Juvenile Komodo dragons face their most dangerous predator, adult Komodo dragons. So hatchlings spend their first 5 years living in trees, feeding on insects and small lizards, staying above the kill zone. Only when they reach 5 feet in length do they descend to claim their place in the terrestrial hierarchy. And there's one more survival trick in their arsenal, one of the most remarkable reproductive adaptations in the reptile world: parthenogenesis. In 2006, researchers discovered that female Komodo dragons can reproduce without males. Through a process called parthenogenesis, unfertilized eggs develop into viable offspring, always male. This means a single female washed ashore on a barren island could establish an entire population. Her male offspring would eventually reach maturity, and normal sexual reproduction could resume. It's a biological insurance policy, ensuring survival even in the most isolated circumstances. This flexibility, dietary, ecological, reproductive, explains why Komodo dragons never shrank. They didn't need to. They could hunt anything, eat anything, and if necessary, produce offspring alone. The islands didn't shrink the dragons because the dragons refused to be constrained. But the Komodo dragon story raises a haunting question. If these giants once roamed across Australia and Indonesia, where did they all go? Why do they survive only on a handful of Indonesian islands today? The answer is extinction. The youngest Komodo dragon fossils in Australia date to around 300,000 years ago. After that, silence. No bones. No trace. The entire Australian population vanished. What happened? We don't know for certain, but the timing is suspicious. Modern humans arrived in Australia between 40,000 and 60,000 years ago. Around 40,000 years ago, Australia's megafauna collapsed. Megalania, the 5-meter giant that once ruled the continent, disappeared. Giant wombats, massive kangaroos, enormous flightless birds, all gone. Australian paleontologist Tim Flannery coined the term time dwarfing to describe another phenomenon he observed. Australian marsupials that survived human arrival grew steadily smaller over thousands of years. His hypothesis? Early humans preferentially hunted larger individuals within species, creating selective pressure that favored smaller body sizes. If humans caused dwarfing in marsupials, what would they do to a 10-foot predatory lizard? Komodo dragons had a particular vulnerability. They're ambush predators that rely on patience and stealth. They can burst to 12 miles per hour for short distances, but humans with spears, fire, and coordinated tactics would have the advantage. And unlike some prey species, dragons were both dangerous and valuable, sources of meat, leather, and protection of campsites from other predators. Eliminating them would have been both practical and necessary. The jury is still out. We lack definitive evidence of human-dragon interactions in ancient Australia, but the fossil record speaks clearly. Komodo dragons once had a vast range and are now restricted to 5 small islands, totaling just 603 square kilometers of land. They are relics, survivors of a lost world. Indonesia's local myths seem to remember something. On Komodo and Flores, oral traditions tell of a woman who gave birth to twins, one human, one dragon. The villagers accepted both as family, giving rise to the belief that dragons are kin and should be protected. To this day, many islanders consider harming a dragon taboo, believing they are guardians of ecological and spiritual balance. Whether these myths preserve actual ancestral encounters or emerged later, they've had a real effect. The dragons survived human arrival in Indonesia, barely. But within the last 2,000 years, their populations contracted severely. Today, fewer than 1,400 individuals remain in the wild. They are classified as endangered. Climate change now poses the final threat. Rising sea levels will shrink their already tiny island habitats. Increasing temperatures may alter prey distributions. The very isolation that preserved them is now a cage. Let's step back and understand the larger pattern. The Komodo dragon is one piece of a strange evolutionary puzzle that plays out on islands worldwide. In the 1960s, biologist J. Bristol Foster first proposed what became known as the island rule. Small species on islands tend to become giants, while large species tend to become dwarfs. For decades, scientists debated whether this was a real pattern or cherry-picked examples. In 2021, a comprehensive study analyzed over 2,500 populations representing more than 1,000 vertebrate species. The verdict? The island rule is real. It's driven by a handful of factors. On islands, small animals face reduced predation pressure. Without hawks, foxes, or snakes hunting them, mice can afford to grow larger. Bigger bodies store more energy, allow for more efficient thermoregulation in harsh climates, and provide competitive advantages in limited territories. Large animals face the opposite pressures. Limited food and space favor smaller, more efficient bodies. Elephants become ponies. Hippos become the size of pigs. Deer shrink to rabbit dimensions. But the Komodo dragon demonstrates that the island rule isn't universal. It's a tendency, not a law. And evolutionary history matters. The dragon's large size wasn't shaped by islands. It was shaped by 4 million years of competition in Australia, then maintained by ecological flexibility on Indonesian islands. This makes them scientifically invaluable. They're a living experiment in evolutionary resilience. They show us how generalist predators can maintain size stability across dramatic environmental shifts. They demonstrate that island giantism is more complex than simple cause and effect. And they remind us that islands aren't just isolated laboratories. They're connected to broader biogeographic history. The dragons traveled here. They brought their size with them. They're proof that understanding evolution requires understanding deep time and ancient migrations, not just present-day ecology. Today, standing on Komodo Island at sunrise, you can still see what Wallace and Darwin never witnessed: a 3-meter lizard emerging from the shadows, moving with the confidence of an apex predator, flicking its yellow tongue to taste the wind for the scent of deer, boar, or buffalo, prey introduced by humans, replacing the extinct stegodon. Researchers observe them with awe and caution. These are not docile creatures. Between 1974 and 2023, there have been 36 recorded bites on humans, with 5 fatalities. A Komodo dragon can smell blood from 6 miles away, move faster than most people expect, and deliver a bite that combines mechanical trauma with venom. Even wounded dragons appear unaffected by each other's venom. Scientists are searching their blood for antibodies that may lead to new medical treatments. When threatened, they can disgorge the contents of their stomachs to reduce weight for escape. When feeding, they can consume 80% of their body weight in a single meal, swallowing huge chunks through an expandable jaw. They hunt cooperatively, showing social intelligence rare in reptiles. They climb trees as juveniles. They swim across ocean channels between islands. They are, in every sense, perfectly adapted survivors. But their range continues to shrink. In 1980, Indonesia established Komodo National Park, protecting 1,733 square kilometers of land and sea. Strict anti-poaching laws followed. Conservation organizations work with local communities, offering ecotourism opportunities that give islanders economic reasons to protect dragons. It's working, barely. The population has stabilized, but climate change is accelerating. Computer models suggest that by 2050, much of their habitat could become uninhabitable. Rising temperatures, changing rainfall patterns, shrinking islands. The dragons survived for 4 million years. They outlasted Megalania, outlasted the megafauna of Pleistocene Australia, outlasted a dozen climate shifts, outlasted volcanic eruptions and ecological collapses. They watched Homo floresiensis come and go. They coexisted with early humans for thousands of years. But they might not survive this century. There is something profound about the Komodo dragon's story, something that extends beyond ecology and evolution into philosophy. We tend to think of islands as evolutionary dead ends, small populations, limited resources, genetic bottlenecks, places where species go to die or dwindle into weak, inbred shadows of their former selves. But islands are also time capsules, refugia, last stands for species that once roamed continents. The Komodo dragon survived not by changing, but by persisting, by being flexible enough to hunt anything, eat anything, and reproduce in isolation if necessary, by maintaining its size and power through ecological catastrophe after catastrophe. It's a living refutation of the idea that evolution always requires dramatic transformation. Sometimes evolution is about staying the same in a changing world, about holding the line, about refusing to shrink or fade. These dragons are messages from the Pliocene. They carry DNA and behaviors shaped by an Australia we'll never see, a continent of giants and mega-predators, a world where a 10-foot lizard was merely one hunter among many. And now they persist on 5 small volcanic islands, eating introduced deer and water buffalo, watched by tourists and scientists, protected by parks and laws, and the thin hope that we can preserve what 4 million years of evolution created. Will they survive the next 100 years? The next 1,000? No one knows. But when you watch a Komodo dragon move through dry savanna grass, patient, ancient, unhurried, you realize you're seeing something that shouldn't exist in the modern world, a predator from a lost age, shaped by competition and migration and the random chances that determine which species reach which islands at which moments in deep time. Islands don't just create giants and dwarfs, they preserve ghosts. And sometimes, if we're careful, if we're lucky, they let us glimpse what evolution looked like 4 million years ago, when the world was full of dragons and the rules were written in blood and stone.